Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On the northern edge of Great Barrier Island, sheer 200-meter cliffs drop straight into the Pacific. Local sailors still trade stories of phantom silhouettes, Victorian-era men, women, and children standing on these jagged rocks at night, looking out toward the sea. Further inland, isolated mass graves at Anapoto and Tapuai sit behind white picket fences, maintained in near-total silence by the Department of Conservation. These plots contain dozens of unidentified victims, left behind on a remote island that, at the time, had no way to communicate with the outside world. The legends of stranded spirits are the cultural echoes of this trauma, an event so isolated and violent, it left a permanent scar on the landscape. In October 1894, the SS Wairarapa departed a bustling Sydney harbor for Auckland, carrying 170 passengers and 65 crew. This was a premier luxury steamship of the era, a known record breaker that had recently set the standard for speed across the Tasman Sea. As the ship rounded the North Island, a thick, blinding fog rolled in, completely obscuring the coastline and the horizon. Captain John McIntosh relied on dead reckoning, calculating the ship's position based on speed and heading alone, while steering with a potentially faulty compass. His calculations were wrong, and the ship drifted miles closer to the mainland than the crew realized. Despite having zero visibility, McIntosh refused to slow down, pushing the Wairarapa through the fog at nearly 13 knots. The crew's confidence in their technology blinded them to the physical reality of the cliffs they were recklessly speeding toward. At exactly 8 minutes past midnight on October 29th, the Wairarapa slammed directly into the cliffs of Miner's Head. The hull failed instantly. Seawater flooded the lower compartments, and the ship began to list heavily to one side. Passengers who had been sleeping below rushed to the deck, only to find themselves violently sliding down the steep, wet wood and falling straight into the freezing surf. Survivors in the water faced a surreal hazard in the dark, forced to dodge heavy wreckage and the ship's panicked, drowning horses and sheep. The transition from luxury to a primal fight for survival was instantaneous. Rescue protocols collapsed. Many lifeboats were smashed against the hull or swamped the moment they hit the water. Around 3 a.m., Captain McIntosh silently jumped into the sea. Shortly after, a massive wave obliterated the ship's bridge, sweeping away anyone left on it. At dawn, 2 crew members managed to swim a lifeline from the wreckage to the shore. Approximately 50 people were hauled through the brutal surf to reach a narrow, jagged ledge at the base of the cliffs. They remained trapped on those rocks for 30 hours, sustaining themselves on pineapples and oranges that drifted ashore from the ship's cargo. The survivors faced a specific, freezing isolation, clinging to a stone ledge while the ship that once promised luxury disappeared beneath them. One lifeboat eventually reached this remote coastline, where the survivors sought help. The local Ngāti Maori community at Catherine Bay took them in, providing the food and care they needed to survive the exposure. Because of the island's isolation, Auckland waited in total ignorance for 3 days before a steamer finally arrived with news of the disaster. The Court of Inquiry placed the blame entirely on Captain McIntosh for his reckless navigation and failure to account for the sea's currents. The final report confirmed a preventable failure of human judgment. The captain had driven his vessel into a cliff face through navigational negligence. Today, the wreck site at Miner's Head is protected by law, a memorial to the more than 120 people who died there. The campfire lore of phantom Victorian silhouettes remains tied to that agonizing 30-hour wait on the rocks. These phantoms represent a tragedy so isolated that the terror of those stranded passengers feels permanently etched into the stone.